Welcome back to another segment of question and answer about the chakras that came from our event, the Flowers of Immortality. And thank you for submitting so many questions. And since we didn't have time to cover them all, we will spend a little bit more time now with just a few of the most important ones. So here is a question that touches on a lot of really important topics. And the question is, can a blocked chakra cause cancer or illness? And can unblocking it create a healing? Well, let's review one of the most important teachings that I gave in the event, which is that there are different systems of chakras. And so what we can say is that the answer to this is somewhat dependent on what system we're using. So if we are talking about the classical use of the chakras, where we learned that the chakras are really places inside the body to do certain kinds of meditations, then the answer would be no, because these chakras don't actually exist until we create them in the prana body, in the interface between mind and matter. Okay, so therefore, those chakras are not going to become blocked, and those chakras are not going to cause physiological problems, because those chakras are actually created in meditation for specific kinds of purposes. And that's why when people ask the question, how many chakras are there? My response was, how many do we need? It depends entirely on what we are doing to create those chakras in the inner body. But the place where this particular question is relevant is in the contemporary modern interpretation of the chakras, which, as I described, is really a system of biopsychology. And this is based on the assumption that chakras have correlations with certain nerve centers and with endocrine centers. Okay, now I say that this is an assumption because obviously chakras are subtle entities. Now, if we are using that particular system, then that takes us directly into the question of health and illness and what causes health and illness, and are the chakras in this system related to that? So since we are talking about a system of biopsychology, then we're also talking about a system of mental and emotional well-being. That's the answer. And so if we're talking about mental and emotional well-being that we can classify according to the different locations in the body, it's a system of body-mind medicine. And if it's a system of body-mind medicine, then yes, it is relevant to whether disease is created or whether healing is created. However, it's not that simple. And this is where there's a huge misconception in a lot of New Age medicine. And the main problem is with this illness that has been asked about specifically. Can a blocked chakra cause cancer? All right, well, that is closely related to a lot of other teachings that unfortunately are very problematic. And I work with cancer patients in my clinic, have worked with quite a number of cases over the years. And one of the things that I hear sometimes from these people is that people are actually blaming them for their illness. And they have picked this up from New Age thinking, that if you have negative thoughts, that's what's causing the cancer. And if you get rid of your negative thoughts, that's what's going to cure the cancer. Well, that's extremely simplistic. And I have never heard of any case where a person has been able to think their cancer away, right? Now, does that mean that our mental and emotional states have no relevance to the development of cancer? I would say it depends on the individual. It depends on the type of cancer. It depends on the history, the genetics. It depends on a lot of things. And that's why we can't make simple correlations, because cancer is very complex, multifactorial kind of illness. And so I have worked with people who are very health conscious and also very positive, healthy people who don't have all kinds of negative mental and emotional states. But because there has been a strong genetic influence of estrogen stimulated cancer in the family, then there has been that risk. And then combined with environmental exposure, the cancer has appeared, even in healthy, happy people. Okay. And that's what's surprising. But on the other hand, our mental and emotional states do play a role in the development of illness, absolutely. And do mental and emotional states contribute to the formation of cancer? I would say it's part of it, but not directly. Mental and emotional states actually have a greater influence on our health consciousness and our health lifestyle, not that we can actually turn on or turn off cancer with our thoughts. What our thoughts do is cumulatively, they will add up to the totality of our lifestyle. And so therefore, if there's chronic depression, there's less motivation to take care of our health. And likewise, if we have a bad diet, there tends to be more chronic depression. And that leads to self-medication with more alcohol and nicotine and cannabis and whatever. And all of these things pile up and become an unhealthy picture. So therefore, can a blocked chakra cause cancer? I would say no, if we're defining a chakra as, a part of the body that has to do with biopsychology. And can unblocking it get rid of the cancer? No, because cancer is too complicated. We can't just think simplistically like this. But on the other hand, we can use the chakras in this biopsychology model, and we can say, we would like to maximize our health consciousness. We would like to maximize and improve our mental and emotional well-being overall. And if we learn how to work inside the body with our meditation, that's going to improve the overall vitality. And so meditation, including chakra meditations, are absolutely part of a integrated, holistic approach to keeping ourselves healthy, and also for people who are going through cancer treatment, if that has to happen. And it is well known, well established now, that if a cancer patient or anybody with a serious illness brings in spiritual practice, that the meaning of the illness can be transformed. And transforming illness from just pure suffering and fear and pain and medications and all of these things that come with it into a spiritual purpose can have incredible benefits for improving the outcome. All right, I hope that was helpful. It touches on a lot of very important things. All right, now, closely related to that, second question, can you address links to the endocrine system, please? And yes, and thank you for asking. And the links to the endocrine system are really, again, in the biopsychology model. All right, this is all contemporary chakras. And therefore, we say, well, what are the links with the chakras? Now, a lot of this is just hypothetical, okay? But sometimes we can see clear correlations. Can we say, for example, that the thymus gland has something to do with the functions of the heart chakra? Well, that's really open to debate, and it depends on how we define the functions of the heart chakra. All right, and so the links between the chakras and the endocrine system, sometimes we can find something that correlates, but a lot of times we cannot. All right. Therefore, the most important answer to this question is, let's start with what is obvious. Okay, and this is an aspect of diagnosis that gets frequently confused. both in allopathic and in natural medicine. Many times, the diagnosis starts from the model that the person wants to use. All right. So many kinds of trendy things in naturopathic medicine fall into this category. For example, SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, is very trendy in naturopathic practice. Okay. And for people who specialize in SIBO, everything looks like SIBO. Okay. Or for, in functional medicine, a specialist in heavy metals, everything looks like heavy metals. Or in the dental world, for a specialist in cavitational surgeries, everything looks like a cavitational problem. So if we start from the model, we frequently miss the actual diagnosis. We tend to look at things through a particular lens, and therefore we should not look at illness from the lens of the endocrine system. We should look at illness from the lens of illness. We should look at illness from a diagnosis, and we should include many different kinds of perspectives. And that's what holistic medicine is really about. We're not just looking at what's happening because of this, we're also looking at because of that. And this is where all forms of medicine are very limited, actually. And so in digestive conditions, for example, there's all kinds of things that happen all the way from the mouth all the way down to the anus. And we could say, well, all right, you've got this whole series of chakras along the way. And what do they have to do with it? Well, maybe that's not the best model to explain it. Maybe it's not an endocrine problem at that level. Maybe it's gut-brain axis, okay? Or maybe it's microbes, or maybe it's inflammation, or maybe it's malabsorption, or maybe it's food sensitivities. There's so many things that we have to consider. And so that's why we should be careful with these models. And so the links to the endocrine system. Well, we will discuss this in detail in the Illuminated Chakras course. And that is because there is historically, especially in modern times, this link to the endocrine system. It wasn't there classically because they didn't know about the endocrine system very much. And that wasn't the purpose of the chakras anyway. So we'll be delving into this. And sometimes we can see that, yes, there are correlations. Okay. Are there correlations with the adrenal glands and fight or flight and maybe the root chakra and the fear and the PTSD? Yes. But as I also pointed out, according to what we know now in modern neurology, okay, that's actually taking place in the brain. And so a lot of the things that we associate with the endocrine system and the chakras are actually centers of the brain. All right. One more, as long as I mention PTSD here, with PTSD, the triggers get stuck in the body. How does this relate to chakras, and can working with them help to create or allow healing? All right, very good question. Now, sometimes the way that I respond to questions is I ask more questions. It's kind of a Socratic method. Question the questions. And so the question here is, PTSD triggers get stuck in the body. All right, that's a statement. And I question that. I don't question that it's true. I questioned how, all right, and where, and what does that mean? And so therefore, if we understand the mechanism of how PTSD gets stuck in the body, then we start to understand all kinds of things, because we're actually understanding how the mind works, and we're understanding how the brain works, and we're understanding how the mind and the brain and the emotions and memory all interact. And so it's actually far more important to understand what actually happens when trauma gets stuck, okay? Because it may not necessarily be in the body. There may be part of it that's in the body. There may be part of it that we can say, according to modern neurology, oh, that's fear-based learning memories that are associated with the functions of the amygdala. All right, that is known. And so we see then that PTSD is very closely related to certain kinds of changes that happen inside the brain, right? Now, how does this relate to chakras? And can working with them help to create or allow healing? Well, I would say that the most obvious way forward with healing is to start working inside the body with the mind, okay? Because that's where the problem is. The problem is in the body and the problem is in the mind. But where exactly and how to access it? And the most fundamental process, and this includes every aspect of healing PTSD that is currently being explored, whether it is pharmacological or entheogenic or meditative or spiritual or whatever, it all has to do with the same process. And that is to create a state of mind where we are able to remember the memories fully, but in a state of equanimity and detachment so that we can start to get some space, some emotional space from the memories. Because it's not the memories that are the problem. It's that we have the continued emotional reactions to the memories. And that's how they're stuck in the body, but that's also how they're stuck in the mind. And that's also how they're stuck in the past. And so therefore, if we look at some of the things that are being done with PTSD, and let's take one of the entheogens that's being used, which is ibogaine. A person has a long, gradual, regressive experience, and they begin to remember everything again. And that's unusual because a lot of times with PTSD, the amygdala is actually protecting the mind from the memories. But as the medication is working, the person is beginning to remember things, but they're remembering things without the charge. They're experiencing it as an observer. And after they get through with this, then whatever the medication was that was being used to control the pain, which is frequently opioids in this case, the craving is gone. And so the research is pointing to the fact that if we can clear the memory banks, that addictions can evaporate, pain can evaporate. So in other words, getting rid of the PTSD actually means purification, purification of the emotions. The purification of the emotions basically means allowing ourselves to look at the past from a deeply spiritual standpoint that is not about the survival of the body or the sense of self. All right, these are very important, profound, complicated kinds of topics. And the answer here, how does this relate to chakras, is that, again, it takes us back to going into the body, going into the inner landscape with the intention to purify it. And that's where the classical system of using the chakras is extremely relevant, because they were not so concerned with treating PTSD. They were concerned with enlightenment. And enlightenment means that we are done with all of it. We are completely finished with this individual incarnation, with our history, with our karmas, with the whole cycle of suffering. We are completely finished with it, okay? And therefore, the chakras were used in a completely different way to raise our consciousness out of the identification with the body in this time and space, into the recognition of our spiritual nature. Does that cure PTSD? Yes, completely, permanently. All right, excellent questions. And thank you so much. And to conclude, I'd just like to invite you, because we're going to be delving deeply into these topics in the course, the Illuminated Chakras. So I hope to see you there. And thank you again for submitting these questions.